Hey everybody, it's Shey. Welcome to my channel. I'm here with Akashic Record reading for the month of April. So if you haven't been here before, I am an energy intuitive, a cosmic channel, and a medium. So I actually dive into the records and get information from you, whether it's galactic or it's just your general Earth Akashic records. I also am an energy intuitive and can go into your field and help you remove any blockages and see what's blocking you and things of that nature. Do body scans to see if there's basically energy stuck in the body. And this can sometimes lead to, I'm telling you things that you already know that's going on in your body if you have thyroid issues or things of that nature. So I can do that as well, but I will get started with the Akashic Records for today. And if you ever have any questions, just drop them below. Or if you have any questions you want me to ask the Akashic Records, drop them below. And also, I do a weekly energy update, and I can answer them there as well. So stay tuned for those if you don't hear them in another Akashic Record reading. So let's start off with the first question. What is the ego's role in spiritual awakening? Well, the ego is actually part of your personality. There's nothing necessarily bad about the ego, but it can become imbalanced. And it can, let's just say, try to take over and want to control your life. Your ego is not there to control your life. You are the one in control of your life. When you start to connect to your higher self and your soul, then you realize this more, as Shey did. Because the higher self actually directs you in directions that are completely different from what the ego has been doing your entire life. You actually kind of break free from any of the programmings and, let's just say, conditioning that you had growing up and things of that nature, what you're programmed with in this life. So the ego's role in spiritual awakening isn't really necessarily to, let's just say, show you the negative. It is actually there as actually helping you in general in your earth life too. As you're connecting to the higher dimensions, you need the ego in a sense to keep you grounded and in the earth realm. However, the ego is never there to tell you what to do and making you follow different things. However, the ego can be tricky and it can try to trick you into things sometimes, as it did with Shey. However, not everybody has a tricky ego. It depends on what programming conditioning you actually agreed to when you came in. So at this time, Shey's ego is a little more balanced. So it still likes to play tricks on her, but she knows when it plays tricks on her, as she is clairaudient now, so she can hear it. And if it's anything that is fear-based or is telling you what to do and things of that nature, or pushy or rushing you and things of that nature, that is the ego. However, it's not always bad. So as we tell her, you should always rely on your own discernment. Do you want to do what the ego is saying, or don't you? Is it something that's going to benefit you, or is it something that's not going to benefit you? So it is up to you, but the ego in the spiritual awakening is just the same as it would be otherwise. However, it is actually learning about discernment. What is your ego and what is your higher self? So at this time, Shey has a balance between the two. She knows which one is which, where a lot of people don't realize that. And some people awaken and they have a spiritual awakening and then they start channeling, but they're only channeling their ego and they're not channeling their higher aspects. So you have to learn to connect to your higher self. And if you would like help with this, Shey can help you. However, there are many people out there who teach courses. Shey does not have one just yet, but she will in the future if you want to take it. However, at this time though, we'd like to say this. If you have any questions, you can contact her or have a session with her, or you can drop a comment below and we can answer it in the comments. Okay, let me go to the next question. Why do solar flares feel intense for some people? The solar flares are intense for some people because they're highly sensitive. Your bodies are actually energetic fields. And so when the solar flares are coming in, it disrupts that energetic balance. So grounding, getting in bodies of water, things of that nature help. Lemon balm tea, chamomile tea, walking, stretching, doing somatic exercises, things of that nature help your body ground. So with that being said, though, the solar flares are more sensitive for some people than others, as some people are more, let's just say, attuned to what is going on around them in their energetic fields. Some people didn't come in with a programming conditioning to be that attuned. So as an empath as Shey is, when she walks into a room, she can feel everybody's energy if she chooses so. However, now knowing that she could do that her whole life and didn't understand what was going on, and she was taking on the energy of other people and didn't realize it, but she has learned to stand in her own soul sovereignty, where she knows what is hers and what isn't. This is a lesson in discernment, and a lot of people are learning this at this time. However, you can learn it by, let's just say, walking into a room, opening yourself up to feel other people's energy, and then if you feel their energy, if you do not like their energy, then you say, no, that is theirs, this is mine. And I do not not consent to taking on their energy. This will help many people in life, as many people are empaths and highly sensitive, and they are taking on energy they aren't necessarily meant to. It is not theirs to carry. A lot of people are walking around carrying others' feelings and emotions that aren't theirs. So dropping that baggage and saying, no, I'm standing my own soul sovereignty and they can stand in theirs, and I'm not taking their energy on. It doesn't mean that you can't be compassionate to what's going on. You just do not accept the energy that they are putting off. If somebody's in a bad mood or they're complaining, you can sit and listen and hold space for them, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to take on their energy and get involved in what's going on. Okay, so the next question is Ascension symptoms versus anxiety. A lot of people feel like that anxiety is linked to Ascension symptoms, but it is not. Actually, Ascension symptoms have to do with the way the body is reacting to, let's just say, their surroundings, and let's just say the solar flares that are coming in. Those are Ascension symptoms. Sometimes people can be highly sensitive and they can have different, body aches, pains, and things of that nature as energy is being pushed through their body and pushing out old energy. The pain comes from actually blockages within the system. As we tell Shey all the time, she has blockages in her shoulder and her right arm, and it has to do with this lifetime and some of the other lifetimes of overworking herself and giving too much. The arms are about giving and receiving. She gives too much sometimes, and she needs to learn balance more than she has. However, she is working on this, as she has a disabled son with severe nonverbal autism who's an adult now she takes care of, but she needs to learn to take care of herself as well. On the other hand, anxiety can be, let's just say, feeling overwhelmed and anxious all of a sudden out of the blue and you don't know why. Sometimes it can be other energies in your field, and they can cause you to be anxious because it's foreign. It's not your energy, it's somebody else's energy, and this causes the body to react. Shey goes through this quite a bit, especially initially when she first started awakening. And there are actually different awakenings. There's a spiritual awakening, and there's actually a, let's just say, societal awakening. So those are different things, but with a spiritual awakening, though, you become more highly sensitive. And during that time, though, when you're highly sensitive, energies can feel very off-putting to the nervous system as they're coming into your field. So this is where you learn discernment and learn to what do you take on and what do you not take on. So at this time, anxiety can be, let's just say, if a energy or a spirit or another energy comes into Shey's field, she can feel it, and it will cause her nervous system to react. That is anxiety. She did not realize her whole life that she was highly intuitive and open, and she was actually having severe anxiety and panic attacks at times. And with this, we would say that most of it in general was having to do with other energies coming into her field and her picking them up. However, now she knows what they are, and if she does not like the energy, she can ask them to leave. You do not have to interact with energies if you do not want to. It is up to you. You have free will. However, other types of anxiety can be, let's just say, thinking about the past too much or the future and worrying and stressing and things of that nature, and it causes the system to get overstimulated. That is what can cause anxiety as well. What is integration? I hear a lot of people talk about integration, and everybody seems to have like a different definition. So let's see what the records say. Integration is actually taking in what you've learned. That is what integration is, and then accepting it within the body and accepting it as, let's just say, part of your reality or your programming, your conditioning. However, a lot of people think integration is, let's say I have to take this piece and that piece and that piece, and then I have to think about them and I have to process them and I have to do all these different things to integrate it, and it can take a long time. That's not necessarily the truth, actually. Integration is just taking different experiences and what you've learned and integrating them and accepting them. And once you accept them, and let's just say you have maybe some shadow aspects from them you need to release, releasing it is actually part of the shadow work. That is not integration. Integration is just taking things in. How do we stabilize during this time? We would say this, as we've said before, we would say disconnect from all the chaos in the world. It is not yours to carry. The nervous system wasn't built to carry that kind of information and that kind of energy. Each person is their own independent reality. They have created their own reality within themselves. You don't necessarily have to co-create with all the other realities or what is going on in the world. However, it doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily affect you to some level. We're just saying that disconnect. Disconnecting is the best way to actually get away from all that. Look at the positive things in life. Enjoy yourself, enjoy nature, enjoy your family. Do something that makes you laugh, something that brings you joy. It doesn't mean that you don't need to know what's going on in the world. You just do not need to take it on as your own. Okay, the next question is, how do we recognize our own intuition? Intuition is something that is learned over time, as it is part of discernment. Intuition is actually learning what is actually coming from, let's just say, your higher self aspects, or what is coming actually from your ego or outside, let's just say, source. Not source, but the collective energy, because everything is actually one. So you can actually take on, let's just say you think your intuition comes from, your higher self, but it actually sometimes can come from other beings around you or the collective information. So you have to use discernment. With that being said, the higher self aspects are something that you eventually connect to over time. But to get there, you have to work and learn discernment, as Shey has. With that being said, intuition is something that she has learned over time. So intuition is not going to be something that is harsh, negative, telling you to do things, being bossy, being pushy. It is something that just drops in like a light feather, as Shey likes to put it. It is something that just comes in. It's not something that's going to be shoved and forced upon you. So that's how you can tell your intuition versus anything else. Why does intuition go quiet sometimes? You always have your intuition per se. It is never necessarily going quiet. It is always there. However, sometimes you can be, let's just say, not in alignment, so you're not getting your intuition. When you're in alignment and you're fully centered and you're connected to your higher aspects, your intuition just flows through you. If you're not, then it can go quiet or seem like it's going quiet, but you're always connected and it's always there. What are some ways to strengthen your intuition? Like we said, being in alignment. By being in alignment, we mean being centered, being in your heart space. Being in your heart space, opening your heart, grounding, opening your heart chakra, and setting the intention to connect to your higher aspects and having the energy flow. You will feel more peaceful. That is when you know you're connected to your intuition, versus when you're connected to your ego, the body contracts, it feels tight. You don't necessarily understand all the time what is going on, but sometimes it is just that your intuition is not necessarily trying to be quiet. It is just you're not in alignment with getting your intuition at the time. Okay, where does your intuition come from? Like we've said, it can come from your higher self aspects, mainly. However, when you're in alignment. However, sometimes it could come from, let's just say, other spirits or other beings around you. Sometimes you just get information, or you can get collective information. So this is where discernment comes in. If somebody is telling you what is going to happen in the world, do not listen to that necessarily. There are a lot of people out there that are psychics, but things can change. Timelines shift. So you never know actually what is going to happen. You can actually predict what is going to happen, or Shey can predict what is going to happen by reading your energy field if you stay in that current energy. It doesn't mean that that's exactly what's going to happen. So she does not necessarily like to give people that information. And if she does, she tells them, if you do not like what I'm seeing, then change your reality, change your path. She could possibly see somebody, keep going down the same path and drinking and putting their body at risk, by driving a car, and then she can see them getting in a wreck. However, that it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen. They have the choice at that point, as they have free will to change their path and their trajectory. Okay, well, that is all the information I have this week for the Akashic Records. I'm trying to keep them a little shorter because nobody likes to listen to 35 questions. So, and then I divide them up, and put them on shorts as well. So I will be doing one of these once a month, and then having a couple go out a week on social media. So if you have any questions or comments, you can drop them below, or if you would like to ask a question, then I can ask the Akashic Records next time, or I can put in a weekly energy update like I had mentioned at the beginning of the video. But I'm so glad you joined me, and much love to you all, and have a wonderful, blessed day. Take care. Bye.